Most elevators go up or down, but Aethelgard Logistics doesn't pay me to move between floors. They pay me to move between realities. I'm holding a pressurized silver briefcase containing a golden core, a human soul extracted from line 13. My delivery address? The 14th floor of the Aethelgard Plaza. The problem? This building only has 13 floors. Rule number 1. If the elevator stops between floors and the music shifts to a wet, rhythmic thumping, do not press the emergency button. That's not a malfunction. That's the building breathing. And if you interrupt its breath, it will decide to breathe you in next. Welcome to the 14th floor. Pray the doors don't open. The corporate silence, the Aethelgard Plaza stands in the heart of the city like a jagged shard of obsidian. It is a masterpiece of modern architecture, all seamless black glass and cold, brushed steel, but it feels wrong. It doesn't belong to the skyline. It feels like it's piercing it from another dimension. I stood in the lobby at 11:45 p.m., the heels of my boots clicking against the polished marble floor with a sound that felt too loud, too sharp. The lobby was empty, draped in that heavy, pressurized silence you only find in buildings that are hiding something. I am a level 4 courier. That means I don't deliver mail or packages. I deliver assets. Today, the asset was a silver, pressurized briefcase that felt unnaturally heavy, as if it were filled with lead, or perhaps something much denser. I knew what was inside. I had seen the reports from line 13. I knew about the golden cores, the extracted essences of commuters who didn't follow the rules. My job was simple. Take the elevator to the 14th floor, hand the case to the receiver, and walk away with a paycheck that could buy me a new life. I walked toward the bank of elevators, my reflection in the black glass walls following me with a slight, sickening delay. The directory board was a digital screen that flickered with a faint, bioluminescent blue light. I scanned the list. Floor 10, Human Resources. Floor 11, Legal. Floor 12, Executive Suites. Floor 13, Mechanical. There was no floor 14. There never is. Not in the physical world. The sequence I stepped into elevator 4. The interior was lined with mirrors, creating an infinite loop of me, the briefcase, and the cold overhead LED lights. The air smelled of expensive cologne and ozone, the same ozone scent from the line 13 platform. I didn't press the button for the 13th floor. Instead, I pulled a small brass key from my pocket, the Aethelgard override. I inserted it into a hidden slot beneath the floor panel and turned it 3 times to the left. The elevator didn't move yet. It groaned, a deep, metallic sound that seemed to come from the very bones of the building. I pressed the buttons in the required sequence. 3, 7, 1, 13. Then I held my breath. Rule 1, the weight shift. The elevator lurched. It didn't feel like it was going up. It felt like the entire world was dropping away beneath me. The digital floor indicator began to scramble. The numbers turned into jagged, alien glyphs that pulsed with a rhythmic blue light. Suddenly, the floor beneath my feet felt soft, almost like it was turning from metal into something organic, something like flesh. The breath of the building, the elevator stopped. The lights flickered and died, leaving me in total darkness, save for the faint, golden glow leaking from the seams of the briefcase. And then the sound started. It wasn't the hum of a motor. It was a wet, rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. The building was breathing. The walls of the elevator began to sweat. Not water, but a thick, oily black liquid that smelled of salt and ancient rot. I remembered Rule 2. If the cabin begins to sweat, do not touch the walls. The liquid is a digestive enzyme. If it touches your skin, the building will begin to map your DNA. Once mapped, you can never leave. I pulled my coat tighter, hugging the briefcase to my chest. I watched as a single drop of the black oil fell from the ceiling. It landed on the floor and hissed, eating a small hole into the metal. The digital display finally settled on a number. 14. But the color wasn't red or white. It was that sickening deep-sea blue. The doors didn't slide open smoothly. They buckled and groaned as if something on the other side was trying to pry them apart. A blast of freezing, salt-heavy air hit me. It was the smell of the Abyss 9 oil rig. The flooded corridor. I stepped out, and my boots immediately sank into 2 inches of freezing black water. The 14th floor wasn't an office. It was a hallway that stretched into an impossible distance, illuminated by flickering industrial lamps that hung from a ceiling made of rusted, dripping pipes. The walls were lined with doors, but they weren't office doors. They were heavy, iron bulkhead doors, the kind you find on a submarine. I looked back at the elevator. My reflection was still there, standing inside the car. But it wasn't moving. It was staring at me with a grin that reached from ear to ear, a smile that my own face wasn't making. I remembered Rule 3. If your reflection stays behind, you have 60 seconds to find a new mirror, or you will be replaced. I began to run. The water splashed around my knees, becoming deeper with every step. The lights above me began to pop, one by one, plunging the hallway into darkness behind me. I could hear something splashing in the water behind me, something heavy, something that moved with a frantic, skittering grace. I didn't look back. I just gripped the briefcase and ran toward the blue light at the end of the hall, praying that the receiver was already waiting for me. Because if the 14th floor didn't want my delivery, it would certainly settle for my life. I made it out of the elevator, but the elevator didn't let go of me. My reflection is still in there, pacing the mirrored cage, wearing my skin like a borrowed suit. Rule number 5. If you hear a telephone ringing in an empty hallway, do not answer it. It's not a call. It's the building checking to see if your soul is still anchored to your body. On the 14th floor, the walls don't just have ears, they have lungs. And I can hear them gasping for air. The weight of the hallway, the elevator doors behind me didn't just close, they fused. The seam where the brushed steel met vanished, leaving a solid wall of rusted, weeping iron. I was standing in 3 inches of black, stagnant water that felt like liquid ice against my shins. The air here was different. It wasn't just thin, it was old. It tasted of salt, wet copper, and the static electricity of a dying star. I gripped the silver briefcase tighter, the metal handle vibrating against my palm. The golden core inside was pulsing faster now, a rhythmic thud that I could feel in my own heartbeat. The hallway stretched out into an impossible distance. Logically, the Aethelgard Plaza was only half a block wide, but this corridor felt like it spanned miles. The walls weren't made of drywall or marble anymore. They were constructed of heavy, industrial bulkheads, held together by rivets the size of dinner plates. Thick, black cables, thick as a man's thigh, snaked along the ceiling, pulsing with a faint, bioluminescent blue light. They looked less like wiring and more like veins. I realized then that the 14th floor wasn't a floor at all. It was the digestive tract of the building. Rule 5. The phantom ring. I began to walk, my boots splashing through the dark water. The sound echoed, but the echo didn't match my footsteps. It was a second late, a hollow thwack that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I passed a door labeled Operations, but the letters were backward. Behind the heavy iron, I could hear the sound of 1,000 typewriters clacking away, but there was no rhythm to it. It sounded like bones snapping in quick succession. Suddenly, a sound cut through the industrial hum. A telephone. It was a sharp, mechanical ring, the kind of rotary phone you'd find in a 1950s bunker. It was coming from a small alcove just ahead. I froze. My hand instinctively reached for the receiver before I remembered Rule 5, the phantom ring. If the phone rings, it is the building's way of pinging your location. If you pick up, you provide a direct link between your consciousness and the building's central processor. I stood there watching the black rotary phone vibrate on its hook. The black plastic was sweating that same oily liquid I'd seen in the elevator. It rang 4 times, 5 times. On the 6th ring, the sound changed. It wasn't a bell anymore, it was a human scream, compressed and distorted until it sounded like a whistle. I clamped my hands over my ears and ran, my feet churning the black water into a gray foam. I didn't stop until the sound was swallowed by the heavy thrum of the pipes. The mirror displacement. I stopped at a junction where the hallway split into 3 identical paths. On the wall sat a large, gilded mirror, a strange Victorian relic in the middle of this industrial nightmare. I caught my reflection and my heart nearly stopped. My reflection wasn't running. It was standing perfectly still, its back to me. It was wearing my coat, holding a briefcase, but it was staring at a wall that didn't exist in my reality. Rule 6, the displacement. When you encounter a mirror on the 14th floor, your reflection will attempt to lead its own life. If it manages to walk out of the frame before you do, you become the ghost. I watched as the me in the mirror began to walk away, heading deeper into its own version of the hallway. Panic, cold and sharp, flared in my chest. I lunged at the mirror, smashing the silver briefcase against the glass. The mirror didn't shatter, it rippled like water. My hand passed through the surface, the coldness of the other side, feeling like 1,000 needles pricking my skin. I grabbed the collar of my reflection's coat and yanked. For a second, we were locked in a silent struggle, two versions of the same man fighting for the right to exist. I felt a surge of heat from the briefcase. The golden core was reacting. A blinding flash of blue light erupted from the seal, and the reflection vanished into a cloud of black mist. I pulled my hand back, gasping. My skin was stained with a blue iridescent glow that wouldn't wash off. The sinking office, the hallway began to tilt. Not a slight lean, but a violent 45-degree pitch. The water rushed toward the end of the corridor, becoming a torrent that threatened to sweep me off my feet. I grabbed a protruding pipe, the rusted metal burning my palms. I looked down the hall, and the walls were beginning to fold inward, like a cardboard box being crushed by an invisible giant. This was Rule 7, the digestion. The building had detected the anomaly, the struggle with the reflection, and was now trying to flush the system. I saw the office cubicles ahead, but they were submerged. Computers, desks, and filing cabinets were floating in the black water, all of them glowing with that same sickly blue light. I saw the receiver at the end of the hall, a tall, spindly figure standing on top of a floating desk. He had no face, only a vertical slit in the center of his head that hissed with steam. "Deliver it," the figure shrieked, the voice sounding like grinding metal. I let go of the pipe and let the current take me. I was no longer a courier, I was debris. I held the briefcase above my head, the golden light now so bright it was blinding. As I crashed into the submerged office, the water began to swirl into a massive drain in the center of the floor, a literal throat in the architecture. I had to reach the receiver before the building swallowed us both. The elevator was a trick. The hallway was a throat. And now I finally reached the stomach of Aethelgard Logistics. This isn't an office building, it's a harvesting station. The 14th floor is where the golden cores from the subway and the oil from Abyss 9 are processed into a singular, terrifying currency. Rule number 9. When you enter the boardroom, do not look at the board of directors. They aren't sitting in chairs. They are suspended in the ceiling. And if they stop singing, it means the audit is over and you've been found redundant. In this company, redundancy is a death sentence. The throat of the building, the vortex, didn't just pull me down, it stripped the air from my lungs. I was a leaf in a hurricane of black water and office debris. The silver briefcase was the only thing anchoring me to reality, its golden glow carving a path through the suffocating darkness. I felt my body hit a hard, cold surface. Not concrete, but something that felt like polished obsidian. I gasped, coughing up the salty metallic water of the 14th floor. I was no longer in a hallway. I was in a space so vast that the ceiling was lost in a swirling nebula of bioluminescent blue gas. The floor was a single, seamless sheet of black glass, and beneath the glass I could see them. Thousands of faces, the commuters from line 13, their eyes closed, their expressions frozen in a state of eternal, silent screaming. They weren't dead, they were the foundation. This was the true architecture of Aethelgard. The building didn't stand on steel beams, it stood on the souls it had harvested. The board of directors. I stood up, my legs shaking, my skin still glowing with that iridescent blue stain. Ahead of me sat a massive circular table made of white bone. There were no chairs. Instead, 12 figures were suspended from the ceiling by thick, translucent umbilical cords that pulsed with a dark, oily fluid. They wore bespoke, pinstriped suits, but their bodies were elongated, their limbs stretching down like the tentacles of a jellyfish. They had no faces, just smooth, pale masks with the Aethelgard logo etched into the forehead in gold. Rule 9, the silent audit. When the board is processing, they emit a low-frequency hum. This is the chorus. If the hum stops, you have 3 seconds to present the asset. If you fail, the floor beneath you will liquefy and you will join the foundation. The hum was deafening. It sounded like 1,000 bees vibrating inside my skull. I walked toward the bone table, the silver briefcase feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. The suspended directors began to sway in unison, their long, spindly fingers twitching as I approached. One of them, the chairman, lowered himself until his mask was inches from mine. I could smell the Abyss 9 oil on him, a thick, suffocating scent of ancient rot and industrial chemical. The transaction, the core, a voice whispered, though the chairman had no mouth. The sound came from the walls, from the floor, from the very air I was breathing. I placed the briefcase on the bone table. The latches hissed, releasing a cloud of white steam that smelled of ozone. As the lid creaked open, the golden core, the soul I had carried through the elevator and the flood, rose into the air. It was a perfect sphere of liquid light, spinning with a frantic, beautiful energy. The board of directors let out a collective gasp, a sound like a vacuum seal being broken. The chairman reached out a hand. His skin was translucent, showing the blue ichor flowing through his veins. As his fingers touched the light, the hum stopped. The silence was absolute. My heart hammered against my ribs. I counted. 1, 2. I pushed the briefcase toward him, my hands trembling. The exit clause accepted, the voice boomed. The floor beneath the table began to glow. A map of the city appeared under the glass, but it wasn't a normal map. It showed the ley lines of the terminal line, the coordinates of the Blackwood Lighthouse, and the deep-sea vents of Abyss 9. They were all connected, a web of harvesting stations designed to feed the thing that lived beneath Aethelgard Plaza. The chairman pointed a long, skeletal finger toward a door at the far end of the void. It wasn't an elevator. It was a simple wooden door, the kind you'd find in a normal house. Your exit clause is active, Courier, the voice whispered. But remember, once you've seen the foundation, the city will never look the same. You don't work for us. You are us. I ran for the door. I didn't look back at the board. I didn't look at the faces beneath the glass. I burst through the wooden door and found myself standing in the rain on a street corner I recognized. I was 4 blocks away from the plaza. The sun was just beginning to rise, a pale, sickly yellow breaking through the clouds. I reached into my pocket and found a gold coin, my payment. But as I looked at my reflection in a shop window, I saw the truth. My eyes weren't brown anymore. They were glowing with a faint, bioluminescent blue. I wasn't a courier who had escaped. I was a carrier. I was the new signal. And as I walked toward the subway entrance to catch my train home, I realized I could hear the building breathing, even from miles away.